Alright, YouTubers, welcome back to Session Report, and again we're playing Spirit Island. We're playing with a spread of rampant green, and we're playing the solo setup of the game. So, I want to explain a few things that we're seeing on this player board before we get too deep into the game, and I'm also going to take a look at my cards. I mentioned before, I didn't really mention before, but I've got some special rules that apply to just my spirit. We're playing with an intermediate spirit, which doesn't mean the difficulty of the game, but it means the complexity of the spirit. So we're playing with a spirit that's got an intermediate complexity. And I can already see it's more complex than the starting spirits that I was playing with before, the easy complexity spirits, because it's got 2 innate powers and 2 special rules. So let's read up on those. So these are basically different ways I can break the game, and the innate powers are different things I can activate. So let's start with the special rules. Choke the land with green. Whenever invaders would ravage or build in a land with your... this is a sacred site. So sacred site means I've got 2 presence on the same land. And that's going to be very easy for me to build up, as we'll see in a second. You may prevent it by destroying one of your presence in that land. There's a good and bad to that. I'm going to be putting out presence over the course of the game. That's great. But... I would lose the presence, which is a bad thing. On the other hand, it would prevent the invaders from doing any damage, and the presence doesn't go back to my player board. So I do have a limited number of presence over the course of the game, but on the other hand, I keep these things that I've uncovered. And the other thing, my other rule, is steady regeneration. When adding presence to the board via growth, you may optionally use your destroyed presence. Well, there you go. So it really doesn't harm me that much at all to destroy my presence. If the island is healthy, do so freely. If the island is blighted, doing so costs 1 energy per destroyed presence you add. So another reason to keep these explorers from blighting the island. Well, this is fantastic. I can prevent them from ravaging or building by destroying one of my presence, which basically means the first round of the game, I could put a presence out here, and this guy wouldn't be able to build. I would just destroy that presence. Now, the downside of that is I'm not going to get to spread as quickly throughout the game, because if I'm going to be using my destroyed presence instead of... Well, actually, no, because I can just wait to use my destroyed presence later, and I can keep putting out... No, I still won't be spreading, though, because I'll be destroying things every round. Okay, I'm not very clear, sorry, but it'll make sense in a second. So then I have these 2 innate powers. Now, innate powers come from playing your action cards. So we'll see what these action cards do in a second. But let's say I played this card, and this card, and this card in one round. By doing so, I've generated 1 moon, 1 sun, 2 water, and 3 leaf. And what that means is, using those elements that I've generated, I can activate some of my powers. So for instance, by generating 1 moon and 2 leaves, I can use Creeper's Tear into Mortar. And level 1 of that, which costs 1 moon and 2 leaves, is 1 damage to 1 town or 1 city. By itself, that's not going to do a lot. Remember, these are just the creepers. These are just like the roots, just the vines, just kind of gently eroding the buildings. So by itself, that's not going to destroy a town or a city. It takes 2 or 3 damage to destroy a town or city. But if I can get level 2, I can repeat that. And if I can get level 3, I can repeat it again, which can destroy a town or a city. Or I could maybe use a different card to do that extra damage. Also, if I've generated 1 water and 3 leaf, I can defend 2 in any space within range 1 of one of my sacred sites. And remember, defend, well, I didn't explain defend. Defend basically prevents some of the damage from the explorers. So let's say they built a town here. The explorer plus the town is going to deal 3 damage. It's very easy to remember. Explorers deal and take 1 damage because there's 1 figure. Towns, because there are 2 buildings, deal and take 2 damage. And cities, because there are 3 buildings, deal and take 3 damage. The only thing that's a little difficult to remember is that the Dahan and the land itself can take and deal 2 damage. Well, the land itself doesn't deal damage, but the Dahan can take or deal 2 damage. The land can take 2 damage, but if they've dealt 2 damage to it, it gets a blight. So, let's say there's a town on this space, and I have a sacred site there. I can play that ability and defend 2 in that space, which means I can take 2 away from that damage that they're doing. So instead of doing 3 damage, which would have blighted the land, they're only doing 1 damage, which is not going to blight the land, and also wouldn't destroy one of the Dahan. So if I could possibly, within 2 rounds from now, get 2 of my presence onto this space before the invaders can ravage, and somehow get to activate that ability, which I may or may not be able to do because I can only currently play 1 card every round. But if I can get that done, if I can accomplish all of that, then I can prevent this invader from damaging these Dahan or blighting the land. If I do that, then I can have the Dahan fight back and destroy that town and destroy that invader. And that would be a fantastic way to start the game, if I can pull that off. So, even without starting to play the game, I'm starting to have to think about strategy. And that's really what you have to do in this game. You have to think 2 or 3 turns ahead. Because, as I will explain in a second, you don't always get to do your abilities before the invaders get to act. So you really have to think ahead. But before we get into that, let's look at the other things on my player board. So, as I mentioned, I'm starting out generating 0 energy per turn and playing 1 card. I can build that up by uncovering these when putting presents out. But at the moment, I mean, I'm not sure whether it would be better for me to get more cards out or get more energy. We'll have to figure that out. Before I do that, though, at the beginning of every round, I do a growth phase. And for this spirit's growth, it's kind of interesting. Most spirits pick 1 out of 3. This spirit always does this. Add a presence to a jungle or wetland within 2 spaces of my current presence. So I could put basically anywhere on the board, because almost everywhere is within 2 spaces of somewhere else on this board. And in addition to that, I do one of these 3. Reclaim my cards. Once you've played a card in this game, it's out of your hand until you've reclaimed it. So you can't use it again until you've done this action. And gain a power card, either a major or a minor power, which means I basically draw 4 and I draft 1, discard the remaining ones. If I get a major power, the only difference is I have to get rid of a power that I already have. Either one of my starting powers, or one of my other minor powers, or one of my major powers even. Or I could add a presence within 1 distance of one of my presents and play an extra card that turn. That would be fantastic to start generating some of these innate powers. Or I could gain a power card and get 3 energy. And that all happens at the very beginning of your turn. Then you get your energy for the turn, so whatever I've uncovered, and then you play cards. After that, the invaders get to go. So we'll see how that all plays out in a minute. But I just want to give you the general overview. The next thing is, let's look at my 4 starting cards. Now this is my first time looking at these, so let's see what these do. Okay, we've got 4 starting cards here. The Gift of Proliferation. Target spirit, that would be me, adds 1 presence up to 1 range from their presence. So it would be a good way to get out more presents more quickly. Stem the flow of fresh water. This affects anything within 1 range of my sacred site. 1 damage to a town or city. And if the target land is a mountain or a desert, instead 1 damage to each town or city. That would be fantastic, especially when paired with my Creeper's Tear into Mortar. 1 damage to a town or city, as I mentioned, isn't going to kill anything, but 2 damage could kill something. Then we have Field Choked with Growth. I can push a town or push 3 Dahan. And push works basically if I targeted, let's say, this wetland space. I could push up to 3 Dahan, That push means move them to any space adjacent to it, away from where it is. And if I push 3, I can push them to different spaces. Gather is the opposite of push. If I gather 3, I can gather from adjacent spaces onto the target space. But you always either gather or push from the viewpoint of the space you've targeted. And finally, overgrow in a night. Now, I could not possibly play this unless I gain some energy first, because it costs 2 energy. This costs 0, 0, or 1. But overgrow in a night, add 1 presence, or if target land has your presence and invaders, gain 3 fear. So I either put a presence out, or I gain 3 fear. And remember, fear is basically the most important thing to winning the game. You need to terrify these invaders into submission, not just kind of scare them a little bit. You need to absolutely terrify them. So those are all of my abilities, a lot of things to keep track of. Plus, as I mentioned, I'm going to be getting major or minor powers. But that's kind of the way the game works. There's one final rule that I want to explain before we get too far into the game, and that has to do with the speed of your powers. Now, as you can see, there's a blue and a red card here. And we can also see speed. One's got a turtle, one's got a bird. The blue powers, and that's my innate powers or my card powers, those are slow. That means when I play that card, I don't actually get to use that ability until after the invader's turn. Then the fast powers, the red ones, I can use before the invader's turn, or actually I must use before the invader's turn. So that's a huge consideration in this game. Like for instance, this turn, I don't want this guy to build. I don't want any of them to build. How can I prevent them building? Well, maybe I could play a card that would destroy the invader here, the explorer. But it better be a fast card, because otherwise I'm not going to get to actually enact that card until after the invaders have gone and built their building. So it's very, very important that you keep track of which of your powers are slow, which are fast. And if you really want to do something, you better start planning for it at least the turn ahead of time, because that card's got to be played the turn before they're actually going to do the action. Otherwise, unless it's a fast action, you're not going to get it off on time. So, I was looking at what I might want to do, and this game is a real brain burner, and especially talking while I'm playing, it's going to be a little bit harder for me to strategize. But I know I'm always going to do this growth action at the beginning, and I think I want to, what I said earlier about being able to defend 2 in this land up here, that would be fantastic, because there are 2 Dahan there right now. And if I can defend, that means that the invaders wouldn't be able to blight the land, wouldn't be able to damage the Dahan, and the Dahan would be able to defeat the invaders. That would be fantastic for me. So I've got to figure out a way to get 1 water and 3 plants by next turn. So I think I'm going to start by, 1 water and 3 plants. I think this will work out. I'm going to start by putting, I'm going to start by putting out my presence right here in this number 1 wetland spot. And I've uncovered my 1 energy. Now I have a choice what else I want to do. And I think what I'm going to do for the first turn is to gain a new power. Gain another power card. Maybe it's something that I can use this round. Who knows? And that'll get me 3 extra energy. And I'll want to use that energy just to make sure I can play my powers later, because energy is saved from round to round. Then next round, I'm going to add a presence. I'm going to use this power where I add an extra presence and +1 card play. And that's going to allow me to play 2 cards from my hand, and I'm going to be able to uncover this extra plant resource, which is going to give me a plant element every round. Which means even if I only play 1 card, I can still maybe get these innate powers. I think that's a fantastic thing to be working toward. But that's next round, because I don't really want to play 2 cards this round. I don't have cards that I really want to play. So it's better for me to start working on getting energy. So I'm going to also use this ability, gain 1 power card and gain 3 energy. So I'm going to draw 4 minor powers, 1, 2, 3, 4. I pick the one I want and put the others back. Now remember, I'm looking for the moon, the leaf, or the water, if possible. Although this card also requires mountain for the strongest ability to remove a blight. And there's a mountain right here. It's also got a water on it. So this might be a good one. Steam vents. I actually really like the look of this. Destroy one invader. One explorer. That would be fantastic. I could play that this turn. It's a fast action. Kill this guy. He won't be able to build. That would be such a good card to have. I really like steam vents. But let's look at the other ones. Entrancing apparitions. Defend 2. If no invaders are present, gather up to 2 explorers. That would be pretty cool. And it's got a moon and a water. Call to isolation. Push 1 explorer or town per Dahan, or push 1 Dahan. These are all fast actions, which is nice. And this is the slow action. Savage Maw Beasts. If target land is a jungle or water, 1 fear and 1 damage. And then if I have 3 of these little claw symbols, 1 more damage. 1 fear and 1 damage. I mean, that would be enough to kill 1 explorer. But I'm thinking Steam Vents, my initial one that I fell in love with, would be a fantastic card that I could even play this turn. And it's helping me build up toward the all-enveloping green, which would let me remove a blight from a land, which would be a fantastic thing later on in the game. Okay, so that's my growth phase. Now we're going to move on to gain energy. I gained a power card. I didn't get my 3 energy. And I'm going to gain 1 additional energy because I've uncovered that spot. Now this is not cumulative. You only pay attention to the last spot you've uncovered. So like, for instance, if it were over here, if I'd uncovered all of those, I would only get 2 energy and a element. I think I would still get that. But I wouldn't get 5 energy for that. Down here, same thing. If I uncovered all the way over here, I get to play 3 cards. I don't get to play like 7 or 8 cards. All right, so I get my energy, my 1 extra energy, and now I can play cards. Now, as I mentioned, I think I just want to play Steam Vents this turn because I don't really have a lot I want to do this turn, and I want to try and make sure I can use my all-enveloping green action to defend 2 on this space next round. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to play Steam Vents. I'm going to pay 1 energy to pay for it, and this is a fast action. So the next thing, after I've played my cards, we go into the fast action phase. I get to use my fast actions. So I'm going to destroy 1 explorer, and it's got to be range 0 from one of my presents. Well, here's an explorer in range 0. Now that means he doesn't get to build. Fantastic move, if I do say so myself. So I've played that card. I'm going to discard it at the end of the turn. Now we are going to go to the invader phase. The first step of the invader phase would be Blighted Island, if the island had been blighted. Then we have the fear phase. If I'd earned any fear cards, I would resolve them. Then we have the ravage phase. If there's a card here, which there will be next round, the invaders ravage in that terrain type. Then the build phase. There is a card in the build space, so the invaders are going to build in that terrain type. They're going to construct a town in every wetlands where there is at least 1 invader. Or if there's already a town, or fewer town, or I guess at least as many towns as there are cities, they would build a city instead. But right now they're going to build a town. So he's going to build a town up there. Now that's okay, because I'm going to kill that town. I'm going to destroy that town next round. Then finally, at the last step of the invader phase, we're going to explore a new terrain. Now this is actually great for me because my spirit specializes in wetlands and jungles. And the first 2 cards that came out, wetlands and jungles. So I'm going to have an easier time of defending those spots. It would be bad if the first 2 spots that came out were, say, mountains and desert. So they're going to explore here, just like we did at the start of the game. Any space that either has an invader, is adjacent to an invader, or is adjacent to the ocean gets 1 explorer. So we got 1 explorer here on this jungle on the coast, and 1 explorer here because it's adjacent to this town over here. Then we're going to move all these cards over. So this goes over here, this goes over here, and next round they're going to ravage in the wetlands, build in the jungle, and explore some unknown space. I don't know what it is. Now, we go to the slow cards phase, the slow powers. If I had activated any powers, I would then... If I had any powers that were slow, like if I had activated innate powers or played more cards, I would do them now. But for now, nothing basically is going to happen. And then time is going to pass. So at the end of the round, during the time passes phase, I discard my cards. Any lingering effects end, which would mean like if I had defense in a certain area or if I had a boost to something in a certain way, that would end. And then, crucially, the thing that I didn't mention is damage goes away. So things that are damaged but not destroyed heal back up to full, which is why it's so important that, for instance, if I'm going to deal 1 damage to a town or a city, I want it to kill or destroy that town or city. So that's one round of the game. As you can see, there's a lot to think about. I'm still thinking 1 round ahead. Like, for instance, now I have to start thinking about not only what to do about this water, which I know I'm going to deal with this round, but is there some way I can protect these jungles as well? But for now, that's the end of the first round. That's going to be the end of this video. I hope you get a sense of what the game's like. And the next video is going to cover the next round or 2 rounds, depending on the length of time it takes to play.